Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and publishers are taking away our video games. They're destroying it. You will own nothing and you will be happy, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I've talked about the situation over the years and I've basically expressed my disdain. I believe that game preservation is super duper important and I think you should own what you buy, okay? If you buy something for $60, I don't care if it's yesterday or 2 decades ago, all right? You deserve to own and keep your copy, all right? You know, I bought Rainbow Six Vegas 2 a long time ago. This is a great game. Amazing title. You know the online servers don't work because the game is older than some of you people watching the video, okay? And you know what? It's fine, because I can still put this in my Xbox, I can still play the single player, I can still kidnap somebody from the street. Not saying that I would do that, that would be against YouTube's TOS, but yeah, the point is I can take somebody, I can find them, put them in the couch next to me, and play split screen, okay? And you know what? I feel that that should be a right for everybody, okay? You know, a lot of people who watch movies, you know, they listen to music, a lot of that stuff is properly physically preserved. Video games, they are not. Okay, in fact, one of the actual big creators over here that I'm actually referring to is Ross from Accursed Farms. Now, this individual made a video, the largest campaign ever to stop publishers destroying games. What was the catalyst for this video being made? Well, it was a Ubisoft game known as The Crew. Now, I played The Crew on my channel a long time ago. I want to say at this point like 8 years ago, when I did a little road trip update video where I, in the game, drove from New York City to Los Angeles. Now, the whole gimmick of this game, The Crew, is basically they give you this abridged version of the entire United States map. So if you want to go from New York to Dallas to San Francisco to Washington, you can basically do that, okay? Now, it's a MMO game, meaning that it's a live service game you're connected to online servers for. But here's the kicker. The game doesn't really even need to be online. You know, aside from encountering other players, most of the races you do are against artificial intelligence, and a lot of the stuff is locally installed and rendered on your system. There's no reason why Ubisoft could have not released an offline patch when they took it down a couple days ago this March. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, The Crew is basically dead. All right, if you go to their actual site over here and you Google up The Crew shutdown, you'll find out, boys, until March 31st, 2024, the game servers of The Crew will basically be shut down after that point, and the game will not be accessible to buy anymore. So a game that somebody bought for $60, okay, I did, me and many others, okay, over 10 million people actually, yeah, their purchase is fucking void, okay? And you know, if you click on this link, they even got rid of the article, okay? They even took that. You can't even preserve the fuck you gave to gamers, okay? You can't even do that. So instead of, you know, putting together an offline patch for the game, like other titles, okay? Look, the Avengers game was a pile of shit, okay? But at the end of the day, the developers behind that game actually updated it to provide an offline mode, okay? Even after official support ceases after September 30th, 2023, both single and multiplayer gameplay will continue to be available. Now, when people even asked him, hey, will all of the content be available offline or will they require a connection? Yeah, you'll be able to experience all operations and the War for Wakanda expansion without an internet connection. And they even said, hey, boys, will all the cosmetics work? Yeah, you'll be able to access all of that offline after March 31st, 2023. So they did something cool out of their pile of crap game, okay? Even though I didn't like it, I respect when a developer jumps in and actually makes their game accessible for the rest of the world, even after they've long supported it, okay? Now, Ubisoft, while they removed this Crew game, they're still selling The Crew 2 on Steam, okay? And they're still about to put The Crew Motorfest on Steam right now. So they made sequels to a game that you can't even play anymore, all right? And this is the question that I think most gamers need to ask themselves. If I buy this game and put tons of my life into, will I actually get to keep any of it afterwards? Will it even matter? This is not a game that's like Rainbow Six Siege, where it's a purely 5-on-5 adversarial online game. That, you understand, needs an online connection. This is a game that very much can be played by yourself, okay? And last I checked, playing with myself, I didn't need to always have people with me, okay? It's fun to goon with others, but sometimes you should have the right to goon by yourself, okay? Now, even when you buy a lot of these sloppy live service games like Anthem, for instance, you buy them alongside these actual PlayStation releases, like, for instance, Dark Souls 2. So when you go to a video game store and you see these two bastards sitting on the shelf, Sometimes they don't even have it written on the branding that this game could die after a year or two, and this game will be installed on your system forever if you want to play it. That's one of the problems. Unless you look at the very corner of this box, it says persistent internet connection and PlayStation Plus required to play. All right, not all boxes sometimes even have a statement like that, as sad as it sounds. And even Ross touches upon this in his video as well too, where he actually talks about, hey look, there are plenty of games like Overwatch and Lawbreakers, which are these live service multiplayer games. They're sitting next to Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Prey, games that are actually single player, completely offline. You can buy these games on a disc, never need to patch them whatsoever, and you can get the majority of their single player experience completely through and through without ever touching the internet. Now, Ross makes a good idea when he talks about the petitioning of this topic as well. After these games are basically released, these live service slop experiences, games should be left in a functional state even after their support ends. Meaning that once you've got games like, for instance, Suicide Squad, which recently released its first Jonkler update, which did not save the game, by the way. It saved it for like 5 seconds until it also just crashed back down to the center of the earth, okay? Obviously, none of these live service games, at least the ones that fail, have a lifespan that could reasonably be longer than 5 years. Servers cost money, and for a lot of these big AAA publishers, they may not want to spend that money on a game that only 20, 30 people are playing. Now, even if Suicide Squad is a pile of crap, in my opinion, that doesn't mean we deserve to lose this game or that game should be lost to the end of time. Tons of people worked on this game. There are people that actually enjoy this game, surprisingly, and they should be allowed to have an offline version of a game they paid $60 to actually play. That should just be a right, okay? We should not be letting these game companies get away with shutting down entire experiences all for the sake that they sent out an EULA agreement that said we can shut it down whenever, and you agree to it just to play your actual purchase. I get it. You signed an EULA. That shouldn't make it legal, and that's the change that Ross and plenty of us want in the entire gaming space. So he says games sold must further require no connection to the publisher or affiliated parties to function, an offline mode, and the above also applies to games that have sold microtransactions to customers. So when he says the microtransactions, that allows this petition to cover free-to-play stuff. So for instance, if you buy a cosmetic in a game like Fortnite, for instance, you should be reasonably allowed to keep that cosmetic or be allowed to have access to that game, even if it's in an offline state, just for preservation's sake. It's weird that companies can sell you $20 to $30 game skins and still yoink the entire purchase whenever they feel like completely away. The above cannot be superseded by end-user license agreements. Like I said earlier, just because you write it in a legal document shouldn't be okay. Look, just because something can be legal, it doesn't make it ethical, and that's one of the reasons laws need to change. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you might be wondering, Muda, who cares, okay? At the end of the day, there's nothing that can change. There actually is a lot. For instance, Ross actually goes upon the legal processes people can take right now to actually petition their governments to make sure companies like Ubisoft and any company, no matter how big or small they are, actually has to abide by preserving their actual title for the end user. For instance, if you live in France, Germany, all of the other EU countries, Canada, the UK, Australia, the United States, Brazil, and I guess everywhere else that involves multiple different planets in the solar system, then you can actually jump in and talk about this situation and actually ask your government. So for instance, if I'm Canadian, I sign the Canada petition. I go over here, click it, and they've made it incredibly easy to, by the way, do. All right, you click this, you sign the petition, and of course this petition is actually at the House of Commons in Canada, so it actually goes right to the government. We contact the DGC CRF, and we go through the step-by-step guide of actually filling out this form and making sure that it's not a waste of time for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And then, of course, spread this on social media. And for most of my audience that lives in the United States, you can do the DGC CRF, you can actually go through the FTC, and again, you can spread this on social media. So if you follow these steps, you can actually make a reasonable dent in at least trying to get the governments to listen. I don't think making videos and screaming into the void necessarily helps. It might just help us spread the message to people on YouTube. But none of this changes until you actually start contacting the government. And that's what companies like Ubisoft, Rockstar Games, fucking EA, Activision, Satan's butthole are all scared of, okay? Even GTA, for instance, right? Grand Theft Auto. Ladies and gentlemen, I made a video a while back where I emulated Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PlayStation 3 emulator. Now, some people would be like, Muda, why would you do that? Can't you just play the PC version that came out? Bear with me for a minute. At some point, even the biggest media industries, even the biggest media titles eventually have to cut things out. For instance, GTA, they remove music out of their games as they get older, right? Because the licensing gets lost and whatnot. At some point, GTA 5 will suffer the same levels of music cutback that GTA 4 did. Because when GTA 6 is out, Rockstar is going to completely abandon their older titles just to service the newer live service game that's making a lot more money for them. So by having the PS3 version of the game emulating, you can preserve a 1.0 version from start to finish of a video game that any publisher can take away. For instance, even when it comes to retro video games like Final Fantasy VII, I can buy that game everywhere. PlayStation 5, Switch, so on and so forth. But I can also take the original discs, copy them to my Steam Deck, and play them as I normally would on an original system. I can't do that for a lot of older titles. For instance, I can't do that for a lot of older SNES games in their original state, like Chrono Trigger, like Earthbound. And so for that, I really do need an actual emulator just to be able to preserve those games. And even if they're available on other platforms, what about the games that aren't? What about the games like Metal Gear Solid 4, one of my favorite games of all time? That game isn't available to purchase anywhere. It's completely abandoned by Konami, by Sony, by anybody that had any right to do with that game. So how are you able to actually play that, in the year 2024? You can't go to the PlayStation Store and buy a copy. No, all you can do is have an original copy somewhere around your house, like I do, back it up to your computer and actually play it underneath an emulator. And to whittle it on back to a lot of these live service experiences, like The Crew, these are connected to online services, meaning at some point, if the actual company wants to abandon them, they 100% can. And you will probably never be able to play these games again, no matter what. Even if you're a fan of them, even if you dislike them, even if you want to play some of these games for the sake of just experiencing a piece of gaming history. On a site known as Delisted Games, they constantly update this daily with games that are being removed from multiple storefronts. For instance, The Crew, which is right here, March 31st, removed from every platform right there. And we can touch upon things like piracy. Piracy is generally it's a pretty taboo topic to bring into it, but sometimes piracy keeps games alive. For instance, the Chronicles of Riddick game, an old PC title, brilliant game by the way, Vin Diesel's actual game is pretty awesome. In order to play that, you can't buy it from any storefront. You have to actually go and find a pirate version of the game to install on PC, or emulate under an emulator and play it that way. It's insane that you have to actually break the law to actually play older titles. It's insane that we live in a world that's actually normalized. And the reason why this kind of a campaign is so important is the future of video gaming may be tied to online services forever. As game publishers, specifically Xbox, do not enjoy the idea of shipping complete games on their disc, you may be completely reliant on playing their games downloaded from their servers. So if one day, 10, 20 years down the road, they just want to get rid of Starfield for whatever reason, it can be completely gone, and because there's no physical preserved version, you may not ever be able to play that game unless it's a pirated copy floating around on the internet. Now, that also being said, what's scary is when you think about cloud gaming or streaming-only titles. For a while, there used to be a game company, it used to be a game studio called Google Stadia. You may remember that. They released some actual exclusive titles on their platform. Now, to think about it, because they were releasing titles in the cloud, if they wanted to just remove a game, you didn't even have the option to at least download the files onto your system anyways, so that one day it could later be cracked and preserved. No, once a game goes completely streaming only, your only access to it is what the game company provides, because it's on a server somewhere, and all you ever get is a video file sent to you. It's truly a weird world of video game preservation, and if an actual cause isn't kept up like this, our very, entertainment medium, video games, could be put at serious risk sometime down the road. Look, I play a lot of old games. I told you, I'm playing through Final Fantasy VII original PlayStation version right now. Brilliant title, and I think a lot of you people who haven't played it should experience it. And same goes for any of these older Final Fantasy titles. If you can play the original version somehow, or whatever, give it a try. But that being said, there are games released today that 20 years down the road, if they're not preserved, like Bloodborne, we may end up losing access to them forever. And that's a goddamn shame if you ask me. Again, I get that most games are probably shitty that I've mentioned out of this list, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a right to exist or be preserved sometime down the road. At the end of the day, people can debate if games are actually art, but the reality is all video games consist of art within them, so they should, in theory, have a bit of preservation. That being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and it was worth actually talking about this because I've talked about this for years, but thanks to Accursed Farms, they've actually started a proper campaign, at least legally, to get this actually onto floors and take these companies to fucking task. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and I am out.